it do? All right, and good afternoon. Good afternoon. How
Good
is everyone
afternoon.
doing? And you're listening to WLTH AM 1370, 92.7 FM. And just to let you know, um, I promised earlier that because of the seriousness of what we're facing and what people face every day, that we would stay true to the dedicated information that we get from domestic violence as well as breast cancer during the month of October. And so, as I promised, I have a young lady that's joining me today, and we're going to talk about domestic violence awareness. And just to remind our listeners that the views expressed by the host and callers of this show are not necessarily views of WLTH Radio Management, owner, sponsors, and or advertisers. And today, we are joined by Miss Tierra Jackson. Good afternoon, lady.
Good afternoon.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. And uh, since you gave me this bio,
Yes.
I didn't. You when I first reached out to her, and I'm going to say this is family, so I'm going to put that full disclosure out there. And I basically know the background story, but I didn't think you were going to share as much as you did. You called me. You said, "What are we going to talk about?"
Right.
And my thing was is whatever you're comfortable with talking about. So if you want to introduce yourself and talk about you a little bit, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
All right.
I need you to pull your microphone into you a little bit closer. Okay.
Is
There you
this
go.
better? Okay.
Mhm.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tierra Jackson. I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I'm also an advocate. I have been free nearly 7 years now, and I actually had children with my former abuser, but I am on the other side of the abuse. I have been serving as an advocate now for the last 3 years, and really championing for other women and men who may be overcoming or breaking free from domestic violence, or who are just simply supporting their family members, friends, colleagues who may be trying to overcome domestic violence as well. And so for me, it's important, it's prevalent, it's every week I'm seeing a news article about domestic violence, homicides, threats, and things. So it is so important to continue this conversation beyond October of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but throughout the year. Everyone knows someone. That is the main thing that we speak on. That comes from our national coalition. Everyone knows someone. I don't care if it's a family member or a friend or someone you know in the community. We all know someone who has been affected by domestic violence. So to not talk about it, to not speak on it and share the resources is just doing an injustice to those who you can help and that you may not even know. So it's important to me. I'm honored to be here today. And all of the things that I will share today are the thoughts and opinions and experiences of my own, and just things that I have researched and, like I say, may have experienced or have just come across throughout my journey and also throughout my advocacy.
Now, how long did you go through the physical and mental abuse?
Well, I was in that relationship almost 11 years, so the entire relationship, I would say, was abusive. It took, I was what you call one of those needing to break the cycle. So a lot of domestic violence relates with that power and control. So a lot of survivors may leave, but then they also have that thing of where they go back and they return. And I was one of them. It took me 3 times to break that cycle of abuse. The average survivor goes back 7 times. So yes, that number is 7. And so I thank God for allowing me the opportunity that final time to break free and stay away and not go back. But again, it's that power and control wheel. So when women do go back, you have to understand there's a cycle. And a lot of women and men, they go through that cycle. So it's really important to read up on just the different tips and things that domestic violence just hold in itself. You know, a lot of times we ask why, but you have to understand there's so much rooted power and control behind the choices.
So let's talk about that. Now, when you were in this situation, when you were in the relationship, did you look at yourself as being domestically abused?
So I did experience early signs of it, but I took those signs of it's just, a certain behavior. I didn't take it as, okay, this is what it is in the beginning. But however, as the abuse heightened and the incidents occurred more and more, I'm like, I knew I was in something dangerous. I didn't know that I was in something dangerous.
So is that typically the way that women don't realize, or women or men don't realize that they're in abusive situations? Because you got to think about it. Some of these start in high school students.
Yes.
When they're calling themselves boyfriend and girlfriend.
Oh yes, we have teen dating violence is a high number as well. I don't have that stat in front of me, but it may be something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 4. So teens experience domestic violence as well in their dating relationships. And the heightened ages really are between like 16 and 34. So, it's a big, big thing, which is why I think awareness in the schools, really starting in elementary school, is important.
Wow.
Because when you think of a classroom, okay, let's say we have 24 individuals in a classroom. Now, some of these stats I'm calling out, numbers may have changed because like I said, I've been advocating now for a few years. So numbers go up or go down. However, in my training as an advocate, the number was was for every 8 students in a room of like 24, you have to think about there's someone being abused. So that's 3 kids going home to a domestic violence household if you got a classroom of 24. And that's a high number, 1 in 8. So when you just think of that number, you think of a classroom, now you think of the classrooms within that school, domestic violence is real, it's prevalent.
So here's the interesting thing. We always want to separate, and we'll call kids bullies.
Mm-hmm.
Or do we necessarily call them abusers?
I mean, you can, the numbers even show, the research shows that many kids that are coming from these homes where there is abuse, a lot of times they act out in certain ways, and it could be in the form of bullying. So I think also as being in a school and having resources, anti-bullying prevention is very prevalent and something that we need to make sure we're incorporating and having that discussion on as well, because you never know why a child may be acting out or why a child may be doing certain things. It could be an outlet, the behavior, you just don't know. So the more you research and the more you bring in preventative resources, then you get to gain that understanding.
Wow. So here's the thing. You talked about the number of times an individual will go back. So, and that number that you mentioned was 7. Just from your experience alone, what were the things? Because somebody says, I can't take care of myself, or was it the fact that he turned the charm on you? You said, we're going to go back and we're going to try it again. What are some of the reasons out there?
For me, I wanted to make my family work. I did not want my children to grow up without both of their parents. So I kept chasing that initial charm, that initial great time that we had in the beginning, not realizing that that was a chase that I was never going to get again. And so for me, it was trying to keep the family together. Also, not knowing how bad it could be if I did leave, just off the threats that I would endure throughout the relationship. So I was afraid. I was afraid to leave, break free, and really seek the help and resources that are there for survivors. So it's no secret, when I did leave, I never would take on the resources initially. But that third and final time, I said, no, God, this time I want to stay away. And I made the decision as a survivor and as the mother and wanting my kids to have a happy and healthy home. I knew I needed to do something different, which was take on those resources. So when I speak on resources, your local domestic violence agencies, getting with those agencies, securing an advocate, securing a family law attorney that specializes in domestic violence. That is critical, especially if you have children with the abuser, because they will fight you for justice, and you have a right as a survivor and mother to fight for your justice. So that's going to be important. Securing those orders of protections, filing those police reports, making those medical evaluations, with things that have happened to you, going to the hospital, all that documentation plays a part in your personal situation, but also, like I said, the resources for your children, making sure you have them in therapy and counseling after they've been exposed to this, because you don't want to repeat the cycle. There's research out there that shows kids that grow up in these homes, they end up sometimes becoming abusers because this is their normal. This has become what they've been used to. So making sure that you ensure that your children also, not only yourself, go through that therapy and counseling that's needed to break the cycle, because that's what we want to do. We want to break that cycle of abuse.
So the interesting thing is, let's talk about this, and I know you're talking from a physical standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
but is it always physical? It can be mental, just words, or verbal?
Yeah, so there are several forms of domestic violence. You have emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, psychological abuse, the sexual abuse, the physical. So there are so many facets and forms, and emotional abuse can also be just as damaging as the physical, because what you have is a situation now where there's underlying issues that may arise after that. A lot of survivors end up developing PTSD. Now, everyone may not be diagnosed with that, but however, the long-term effects of being in something that is controlling of that nature will have some long-term effects that may come to the surface later on, even once you break free. So, yes, emotional, to me, I always like to say, I don't compare my story to someone else's. I don't compare my situation to someone else's, and I also don't minimize my abuse that I endured to someone else's, because you just never know. And there's no measuring tape involved, in my opinion.
Okay, but a lot of times you will find people that will say that in order to get a person to leave or to break free of what they're going through. It's like, well, I went through this, this, and this, and this. So you're saying the better option, as you mentioned earlier, is to go and look for a resource.
Yes. If you have experienced any of those or many of those, spiritual, financial, emotional, psychological, physical, one or the other, you still should take on your local resource. Here in Lake County alone, we have some resources. We have Sojourner Truth House here in Gary. If you're in the Hammond area, you have Haven House. If you're in the Crown Point area, you have St. Jude. And then you also have the State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is branched out of Indianapolis. However, they also serve survivors as well. So they're throughout the state. So if you know of someone in the state, like I said, there's local resources, but also on a national level, if you know someone, we do have the hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, also 1-800-799-7233. Wherever you are in the U.S., you can be connected to resources for domestic violence in your area.
Wow, amazing. Now, I know we always talk about it, and we know this. Family means well.
Yes.
But for family, they'll get frustrated, and they'll tell you, you can do this, and you should do this, and
Mm-hmm.
then if you wind up going back, then they're upset with you, they don't want to talk to you anymore. Can we talk about that aspect of it? And not necessarily from your standpoint.
Just in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, so family support, and I know it can be frustrating. You've done all you can to help someone, maybe getting resources or buying things or taking them in or helping them out, and then what? They go back or they continue that cycle. I know it's hurtful, but you have to understand it is a power and control thing, and the survivor is going through something that even they don't understand. And again, that's why it's important. You continue to don't judge, just be there to listen, be there to help, but just know that when you do help a survivor, continue to direct them towards those resources, because that is going to be so important. When you are able to get away from a situation and get the resource as an advocate, have someone to hold your hand through it and help guide you through it, develop a safety plan, those types of things. Also, to have the support group and the counseling that's going to be needed. That is what you need to keep your strength throughout enduring it. And then as family, I know it's hurtful, but you have to understand that cycle and that pattern. It's 7 times. It's the facts. The average will go back 7 times. Now, we would hope that it doesn't reach that number, but again, that's why resources are so important, knowing that they're there, but also utilizing them, because that was my mistake. In the beginning, the first 2 times, I didn't utilize resources. I thought I could be strong on my own. If you know me, you know that I'm very resilient. However, even being resilient, your therapist has a therapist. You know what I mean? So even the ones we look at as the strong one, they have someone that they lean on as a mentor, as a coach, as a therapist, or whatever resource. So you have to take those on, and no one is too big or too good for it. It can happen to anyone. Domestic violence doesn't say, oh, because you're rich, you'll avoid it, or because you're poor, it's going to just happen to you. No, it can happen to anybody at any time.
And you also mentioned in terms of childhood as well.
Would you say? I'm
Children.
sorry. Oh, yeah, children. They're exposed to it. So when you're raising a child, you have to keep that in mind. Yes, you want to keep your family together. However, the long-term effects of your child being exposed to this is damaging. It is damaging. And even when you leave and break free, you don't know how that child is going to have these aftermath of it. It can bad grades. That's a factor of being in a domestic violence household and then being split, and then that's something that you may experience. Bad behavior. So these are all things that are residue and results from being constantly exposed. And a lot of times your children will in some way cry out for help. It may be saying something to a teacher at school, or like I said, getting in trouble, but there will be signs. So that's why I mentioned in the importance of having resources in the schools. That way teachers are aware of the signs. Your staff are aware of the signs, because a lot of times what someone may perceive as acting out or not caring, there's underlying issues, and it could be directly related to a domestic violence household.
I don't know whether you know, as far as the state of Indiana or even locally, do they have, or because we got all these laws, HIPAA laws, that you can't say this, you can't say that, and I think that in the long run, I think we're going to realize ultimately that was a poor decision to include, because with mental illness and the breakout of mental illness, and you're talking about the burdens of violence and things that children go through. Do you know if it should be in schools, or should you recommend that type of counseling, or how do you reach out to a parent and say that to the parent when the parents won't accept it themselves?
So again, I just keep pointing to my understanding that if you are in a school, that if they notice things, that they have the right to report to, whether it's CPS or whatever entity that they want to report to. But to me, even just having, like I say, those resources in the schools, because you could have a mother who may have lived through this growing up in childhood and think that it's normal. So just when you constantly have these parent workshops, parent fairs, and things like that at the school, or just community fairs geared towards youth and their families, having those domestic violence resources are just helpful, because again, you're exposing what's out there, and at some point they may read it, may look at it and say, oh, this is me, and take on utilizing that resource. So I think the more we have those conversations, the more we expose those resources, the better outcomes there will be. Because a lot of times you see what happens in this house stays in this house, and there's just all these mentalities that are out there, and then people are afraid. I mean, I have seen it where people are afraid to even talk to the youth about this. And we should be talking to the youth, because I just said the numbers show in a classroom, if you got 24, 1 in 8. So it's like, it's 3 students per class. And if you think about your school, that's a lot of kids that are living through this day in and day out.
Wow, amazing. So, there's some things that you did do once you left the situation. So can we start that third time when you left?
Yes.
You come back. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes. First and foremost, I thank God for being here. I thank God for being able to sit here and share. And I thank God for allowing me another chance at life, because I know, many don't make it out. So for me to have that chance to break that cycle after 3 times, I thank God for that. Many do not make it out. So I just think about the women who couldn't get out and their families are here and they're doing balloon releases. So this is a privilege. So I feel like my assignment, my calling, God really wanted me to get free, get the help and resources I needed, but also to help the next one. And so that's my purpose, and I'm living that out daily. If I get a call or if I get an email or if someone just wants to ask me anything, it's my assignment to help them. Just have the knowledge that they need, and also just to be a support, because it's not easy breaking free from domestic violence. And a lot of times, I can only speak from my experience, there are serial abusers out there. We don't talk about that, but that's reality. When they leave you, they go on to abuse the next one and the next one and the next one. And that is serious, because if they leave you and they do that, and then I don't know, if you may have had a case where you've reported and it's been out there, okay, this is who this person is, but then there's multiple cases or there's multiple incidents, then at what point, we also need those resources that are out there to also take authority as well and make sure that they are putting those people through the different protocols. So we have an Indiana Batterers Intervention Program. Make sure that when you have a multiple offender or an offender that continuously violates the order of protection or has multiple police reports, make sure you mandate that they go through that program or those services that are there to hopefully intervene. Because what can we do to help the next one if I get free and then he goes on to abuse someone else, and then they see that, well, he's been able to do this many times and nothing has been done? What hope are you giving a survivor, or what hope are you giving that person that's trying to break free from that person? So I'm just speaking from a serial abuser standpoint. So just making sure when we have these protocols in place that we follow them and that we actually order them to be done.
So in your story, you talk about the ultimate decision to leave your abuser and the father of your children. It was after an incident that occurred that could have left you paralyzed.
Yes. I was beaten really bad, and so that was the final beating that I endured, that I went and sought medical attention for, and that caused me to say enough is enough. While you think you're trying to make your family work, you won't be here if you continue to stay. And so for me, and the injuries that I had from that final beating, I knew that it was going to be life or death, and I didn't want death, so I had to go.
So you went to school, you've gotten degrees, you've gotten certification in talking about this, and I have to applaud you, because some people can't talk about it because the weight is still too heavy. So I do applaud you for all that you've done. And if people knew in terms of the education, in terms of the help that you listed out there, that you would be getting a cloud of applause every time you walk the street.
Well, thank you.
I have to applaud you for that. But you talk about serial abusers. Do you think that you experienced that with the person that you were with? Most
definitely. They went on to abuse, and this isn't just me saying it, it's on file. They were able to, there were multiple women who were abused. And so I can't speak on what was done in each case, but I know for my case, nothing was ever fully ordered to go through. So like when I mentioned that abuse, batteries intervention, that was never I offered it, I suggested that, but that was never something that they were made to go through. And so I can only think of, wow, what if they had been able to just go through that and get that help? That may have been very beneficial, not only for my family, but for maybe the others that were after me.
So you talked about resources, seeking out the resources, and you also talked about people coming back. There are times when they even get protective orders against this abuser, but a lot of times the women won't go to court, or they'll dismiss it, and it just falls by the wayside. So what can we do in that situation? Because we do know that they wind up committing suicide, they wind up dead, killing their children. When you're encouraging them, if you reached the state has picked up the case, the police, what more can you say or do?
Well, when the state picks up the case, I think it's important when it's in the state's hands that they really look at the file, look at the facts, and really make their decisions based on that. Not on the emotions that I may have as a survivor that has come down and say, hey, drop this or do that. No, we need to look at the facts, because a lot of times you'll have somebody, they have your case, and like I say, open other cases. And, so we can see who we're dealing with. We can see what we're dealing with. And so we know that we have interventions as the state. We can address these things. And then also making sure that the survivor is taking on those resources if it's of that severity that, like they coming down. We need different laws in place. That's another thing. The laws too. You have to think about that. They can be lenient in some, especially because in my instance, you have family court, right? But then you also have criminal court. So when you're going in family court, they're not wanting to hear, in my case, weren't wanting to hear what was going on in criminal, even though it was going on throughout. And then you go in criminal, they're not wanting to hear what's going on in family. So then you're dealing with an intersection of who's going to hear it then. So it's so many layers, which is why awareness is so key. Because if you don't know, then you just don't know. And so I encourage, if you are a survivor listening, when you can, gain the strength to speak up and speak out. I sat on a call yesterday with Indianapolis. It was an organization, I believe it's called Firefly, but they were talking about firearms. And Lieutenant Atkins mentioned how when you see something, say something. And that is just what it is with domestic violence. A lot of times, people don't want to get involved. We understand, however, you can always make an anonymous call. You can always help someone in some anonymous way. But at least if you see something, say something. You don't necessarily have to come to the front line, but if we ignore it, then we're a part of the problem too.
Wow. As I turn the page here, I'm looking at the thing that jumped out at me, and it happened to me in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
That I was connected with Cindy's Girls Foundation.
Yes. Great foundation. Yes. Well, I won't, I know Cindy's Girl is doing a lot in the community, but I don't want to speak on behalf of the foundation. But I do love the organization. I know they do a lot of things about awareness on both the side of breast cancer awareness and domestic violence awareness. And they do have a event coming up this Sunday at the Dean and Barbara Wright Center from 1 to 4 p.m. It's a fashion show, but it's also an empowerment experience. And so please, if you can, go online on their Facebook and also their website and purchase a ticket to that event, because that is something, again, is information. It's going to be understanding panel discussion. And again, a lot of awareness out there. So those resources I'm speaking on, there'll be some of those available, at least to know of there.
Okay, all right. I plan to stop by because I want to find out. And as you said, there's a lot of information that we can get to put out. Now, you talked about the PTSD side, or something that you don't recognize yourself once you've gotten out. And I'm not, this is a general discussion. When individuals get out, and then later on in life, they go back through that cycle where they're remembering all this, and not only did they go through that, now it's hidden, or they felt that they dealt with it. What about going back, or what about a resource to go back to help me to say, I went through this, and I didn't mean to do this, and I didn't know the harm I may have been doing to others?
So from the survivor standpoint,
yes.
So of course that being diagnosed would be under the evaluation of a doctor. However, if you feel like you fall under the symptoms, of that, and if you've been evaluated and diagnosed as that, then of course you would get the treatment that you need. But a lot of times you may have just going through abuse. Like I suffer sometimes from different memory loss of certain things if I didn't document certain things. So it's like if you're looking to just remember every account or something like that, you really want to make sure you keep a log, have a journal if you're able to, a note on your phone where you're just keeping a log of incidents. Thankfully, in my situation, I'm very well with documenting, and so I have been big with keeping a file, and so I that's just what I do. However, if you're not able to do that, I would just say if you're starting fresh, just start where you are, go off what you can remember, and write that down. But like with anything, as things go on, sometimes you have triggers, so something may trigger a memory. And so I experience that sometimes where I'm remembering something that I thought I forgot, but actually I didn't. It just took me to hear about something or read about something. And I'm like, oh, I remember when I had a time where X, Y, or Z. So you can have that too.
So are there groups too for women such as that? Or you talk about the resources, but can someone who is a survivor go back and participate in something?
So there are survivor support groups. I'm actually involved with them, a few actually, locally and nationally, and I highly recommend a survivor finding a support group where they feel they can fit, because that's a part of your healing too. That's a part of your journey and your advocacy and being able to work alongside. When I say work, like just even having someone that can understand, because a lot of people just, as much as you mean well, you just don't understand because you haven't been through those shoes. So when you have a support group with women who have walked that same walk, may have been a different path, but we understand, we connect in some way of knowing we are survivors. So it's important to do that. And for me, a part of my healing journey included me going to a retreat. I went all the way to Texas for a 4-day retreat for the healing of domestic violence survivors. And at that retreat, these were all survivors. We had been broken free from our relationship at least a year, where we hadn't gone back, and we did a healing retreat. And in that retreat, we were able to just really get to the core of a lot of what we went through and how we could overcome it. And I highly recommend a survivor investing in their healing journey. So that was a thing that I did. And also, when you hear of like domestic violence conferences, I flew to Florida to attend one, and my parents actually came to support me. So just doing those things, continuing to walk the walk, it is not an end thing. I look at healing as not an end destination. It's a journey for me. So I will always be healing on this journey. I'm strong on my journey. I'm resilient on my journey, but I'm still healing, because you have to understand, I went through a traumatic life remembering situation. So that is, I will always identify as a survivor. I identify more as a warrior these days than an advocate, but I'm a survivor by heart, by understanding, and I know that I overcame something that many didn't overcome. We have a lot of angels out there, angel survivors, who they wish they could have broken free. And so, like I said, it is my life and my daily duty to do all that I can to bring awareness and to support the next one.
Wow, amazing. Domestic survivor, mother, and advocate is Tierra Jackson. She's an MBA in higher education professional from the University of Chicago, mother of 2, and she has also completed a 6-month program and became a certified Christian woman's life coach back in 2021, and it's called Coach Academy. And she wants all women to know that they're going through or overcoming domestic violence, that there are resources out there, and you focus a lot on that. I really appreciate your time, your honesty, your frankness in talking with individuals. I encourage you right now, you're talking to the women out there or men who's going through it, in your speech, your final words before we get off.
You can overcome what was sent to break you. Keep the faith, trust God, know that whatever it is that carries you through, you are a survivor and you are a thriver. Nothing that was sent to destroy you can prevail. And if you keep that faith and you keep that mindset, you can overcome anything.
Wow. Well, thank you so very much. I thank you. I appreciate you for coming on. I love you to death.
I love you too.
And it's a lot. It's a a lot to unpack.
Oh, yes.
But I'm thankful for the fact that October, in terms of the awareness and what you can do when other people say you can't and when you feel you can't yourself, I think that's really important. And you conveyed that message today, and I pray God will continue to allow you to change lives by doing that, because it's a lot. And as we talked about it, it may not seem that it's a lot, but as you mentioned earlier, it's a life trauma in life, and it altered your life in so many different ways. When you had other plans, it just went in a different direction.
It went in a different direction, yes. And, I look at it too, like, I'm thriving. I identify as this situation that happened to me, but God has blessed me since then. And he blessed me through it, but he's continued to allow what I went through be my testimony and to be what has propelled me to just go on and do greater things. And so I'm grateful for it.
Well,
I'm on assignment.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And stay on the path, because you are such a needed element out there. People need you every day, and I know that that's what you're doing, and I know it's from the heart that you're doing this. So congratulations, and
Thank you.
again, thank you so much. We got to do this again. We got to have some more conversation. I'd love to have a panel. I'm going to try and do it before the end of the month. If not, we're doing this in 1 month, but it's a 365, 52 weeks a year that
Yes.
people out there suffering. So if we could change one life with our conversation, I'd certainly appreciate that. We could at some point form that. And lastly, you're so good at writing stuff down. Where's the book?
Lord willing, I will begin writing that soon. I couldn't for a long time because of the legal parameters, but now, as of recently in this year, I've been able to. So when God puts it on my heart to put the pen to the paper, I will.
Okay.
I will. It'll be a story of thriving, because that's where I come from. I'm all about thriving. We are not what we went through. That's the main thing you need to remember about me and about yourself. Whoever is overcoming this, you are not what you went through. It was a season, and we have to look at that season as we learned the lesson, we went through it, we endured, and if we made it out, we are on assignment.
No matter what another person may say about you, you can do this.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank the listening audience. We did stream live, and it is on Facebook if you want to go back and take a look at it. Very important information and a very honest look at a journey that someone survived. And as she said, not everyone. So coming up shortly here, 2 to 5 Drive will be Dr. J and Latrice. And hey, they have a surprise. We're going to be talking to someone who is rooted in the neighborhood, and maybe you didn't know about the Halloween trick-or-treat. So everyone be safe. I love you, Tierra.
I love you too.
Listening audience, and thank you so very much for stopping by and having this conversation with me today.
Thank you.